North Korea launched at least 65 ballistic missiles in 2022. It's a huge jump from past years. Soo Kim is a policy analyst at the RAND Corporation. Sue, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So remind us of North Korea's current nuclear capabilities.
Sure. So let's actually go back to January 2021 when Kim Jong-un laid out some of the key priorities for his country's the strengthening of their military capabilities. There's a list of items that he was trying to check off. And it appears as though his wish list is actually being cleared slowly but surely. And I think we're expecting North Korea to basically check off most of these items by 2026, which is when the next Party Congress will be held. So we're talking about hypersonic missiles. We're also talking about spy satellite capabilities that they were trying to show this past weekend. There are questions as to the capabilities of the satellites in terms of military reconnaissance, but I think what we need to stress here is that they're slowly making progress, and what the North Koreans are showing us right now are not necessarily the final product of the fruits of their labors, and we're probably going to see even greater improvements combined with, I would say, a greater will for North Korea to continue to provoke, and if and when there is a time to come to negotiations with the United States again, they will be in a much stronger position. Add to that also the multiple warheads that they're able to put on. The missiles, ICBMs, they fired about 8 ICBMs this year.
Well, talking about ICBMs, I mean, at this point, North Korea can hit the United States with a nuclear weapon and really anywhere in the world. Isn't that right?
That's what we should be preparing for, I would say. And as Kim Jong-un's sister recently pointed out, they have been testing basically ICBMs at lofted trajectories. And what they're trying to show soon, I think, is the ability to launch not just from a lofted trajectory, but something that's going to be much more less lofted, straight, which is going to extend the distance and, of course, show once again and to remind us that they still have the capabilities, and they're also trying to beef them up so that, again, going back to dealing with North Korea's nuclear weapons, it's going to put us in a much more difficult position, I would say, in terms of trying to curb Kim's nuclear appetite.
Is the stated American policy of, quote, a complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula ever really going to happen?
So I think this is where we need to be cautious in how we're setting either the intermediate or the end goal. If we do set the goal of arms control or tension reduction as the final goal, I think we're just playing into Kim Jong-un's hands. But then there's this argument where if we don't start with tension reduction, then when, or how are we actually going to get to denuclearization of the DPRK? So that's where we are. And I think that there are questions as to whether or not, U.S.-South Korea extended deterrence is going to be capable of handling North Korea's weapons threats. And of course, the grand question, are we actually settling for something less than denuclearization? And are we going to be happy with it? And of course, are we going to be able to deal with the consequences of a nuclear-armed North Korea? Combine that with Kim's, I think, growing thirst to do something with his nuclear weapons, where he's going to be in a position to have the United States, South Korea, the international community accept North Korea as a nuclear weapon state.
You know, there are some recent polls suggesting that 70% of South Koreans support their country developing nuclear weapons. How significant is that?
So I would say that this is pretty significant. I know that in previous years, there have been polarized, of course, opinions about South Korea going nuclear. But I think the shift now that we're seeing does reflect a greater concern and greater sensitivities about the nuclear threat from North Korea. And I would also add that the threat from China and the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine is probably also having an effect on how South Koreans are perceiving their national security. Previously, they accepted North Korea, or they lived with the North Korean threat, and they probably took it as just a state of life. Now that they're seeing consequences of a war going on between Moscow and Kiev, combine that with Kim Jong-un's strengthened nuclear capabilities, his willpower. And he also said that negotiations with the United States are it's not going to happen. That puts South Korea, I think, in a much more difficult and much more precarious position.
So do you think,
about the alliance?
Sorry to cut you off. Do you think South Korea will become a nuclear power eventually?
That I think is up to the discussions that are going on between South Korea, the United States, Japan. It's not just talking about the security of one country, but we also have to think about how this is going to bear implications on the regional security. And it's not to advocate for one side of the argument or the other, but there are going to be consequences to either or. And I do think that instead of trying to avert discussions about nuclearization or even, questions about expanding extended deterrence, there needs to be a robust discussion about the options that are available and also the consequences that are going to fall from each one, so that if we do have to deal with these contingencies, we're better prepared.
All right, Soo Kim, it's always nice to talk to you. Thanks so much for being on the program.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future Government Matters interviews.